Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So thanks so much for the feedback on the narcissism video. I think a lot of you were waiting for that, so I'm really glad that you liked it and I received amazing feedback. I appreciate that, and I did say that I was going to do a bunch of videos covering this topic. So what better way to kickstart this series than talk about your most critical relationship and probably the first narcissist that you'll meet, and that's narcissistic parents. Now that's if you have a narcissistic parent, of course, but I believe that your parents obviously shape who you are. They're the first people you really meet. They're the ones that shape you as a person and your personality. So if you have a narcissistic parent, then most likely you're running around either not feeling good enough or trying to please everybody else or trying to look for fulfillment. So codependency and all these things stem from that. So it's important to see if you have a narcissistic parent and if you believe that even now that narcissism is affecting you, and it's no good dealing with this or talking about this 20 years later. If something's happening to you now, you need to put a stop to it, or you need to manage that, because in the long run it could really affect your health, as I mentioned in my video of the effects of mental health on the body. So it's very important for you to see that if someone that's that close to you and you can't really get rid of or walk away from is affecting your mental and physical health, then you need to find ways to manage that. And you need to see the signs if it is a form of narcissism. I've had many of you message me and ask for help or guidance on how to deal with narcissistic parents. And majority of that were narcissistic mothers. And I believe the reason for that is, although the divide between men and women in narcissism is a lot more towards men, the reason I find that more people are messaging me in regards to their narcissistic mothers is because the mother is the primary caregiver traditionally and culturally in most cultures. So they get a lot more face time with the child. So if the mother is a narcissist, then the impact of that is a lot more severe on the child than when the father is a narcissist. Because like I said, most times it is the mother that spends the more time and is the primary caregiver and is the one that's more involved and has an emotional relationship with the child than the father. Because if your father is a narcissist and he's quite mean, quite cruel, quite authoritative, when you're young you kind of associate that with being that person being your dad. Most dads are quite authoritative and they are quite emotionally detached, so you kind of just put it down to dad is being dad. But when your mother is behaving like that, that's when it's impacting you a lot more, and therefore that's why more of you guys have messaged me about problems with your mothers, because it's the relationship and the way it impacts you. Before I get too deep into it, I just wanted to point out a couple of things. When it comes to parents, it's very difficult for us to label them as narcissists or even put them under that category. So it's not about labeling. Labeling confuses people. So rather than actually dealing with the emotional trauma that you're going through, you'd be too busy trying to figure out whether your parent is an actual narcissist or not. It's not about labeling. It's about seeing a pattern of behavior that has happened over a number of years. It's a reoccurring pattern of behavior, and it's a continuous neglect and a continuous abuse towards you. So it's not a one-off event. It's not like your parents having a bad day and they lash out at you on the rare occasion and therefore they're narcissist. That's not the case. What it is that if it happens over a prolonged period of time, there's definitely a pattern in the way they behave. There's definitely, steps, and it happens all the time and it's in the same way, and you were made to feel a certain way, and you were made to feel like you're not good enough, and unless you achieve something on the material basis or physical attributes, then the emotional side isn't important, and that happened for a long time, like I said, reoccurring, then that's when you're probably dealing with a narcissistic parent, and you don't need to label that. If the behaviors are there, then it's there and the traits are there. So, and also, having said that, I'm not here to invalidate anyone's trauma. Narcissists are narcissists because of some sort of severe insecurity or a severe trauma. And I'm not here to invalidate what our parents have done for us to get us to where we are or how hard they've worked. But what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't rationalize them behaving a certain way towards you today because of a trauma that they dealt with or haven't dealt with many, many years ago. And that's where we need to kind of figure out if that's what's happening and know how to manage it and deal with it. To spot a narcissistic parent or both parents is when you think back to your childhood, does the word always come up to you for you? So when you think back, oh, well, mom was always a bit selfish. That's just how mom was. Or dad was always lacking empathy. He wasn't very empathic. And that always shows that it was prolonged and continuous pattern of behavior. And the main things that we look out for, like I mentioned in the narcissism video that I posted last week, is the same traits. So were they empathic? Were they emotionally available? Did they care about your emotional side? Did they get deep in with you on your emotions and feelings? Or was it always based on achievements? Were your parents always celebrating your achievements? So if you got good grades at school, was that something that made you feel like you were good enough? If you were the best athlete or did a lot of extracurricular stuff or looked good, if you were the good-looking child, did you get favored? If you favor one of your parents more, you look like one of your parents, were they closer to you? Because a narcissist then would see themselves in you, therefore you're also like them, so you're good enough. So it's the same traits that a narcissist would have. Did you see those traits in a parent, and did they make you feel like you were either the scapegoat, the neglected child, or the golden child, where you were put on a pedestal? And was there a big divide between the relationship of your parents, between you and your siblings? So these are the things to think about. If you see, like, if it was always a matter of this always happened and this is how it was, then for sure there is some sort of repetitive pattern that's going on here, because that's your memories. To you, that's always. And those patterns of behavior are the things that a narcissist traits are. So like neglectful, lack of empathy, always appreciating the material things, always putting someone on a pedestal and always picking on the one kid, be it the scapegoat or the golden child. All of those things combined are probably indicators that one or both of your parents had narcissistic traits or were narcissists. So typically in a narcissistic household, one or more child becomes the scapegoat. So something about that child doesn't please the narcissistic parent, and therefore they become the scapegoat for everything going wrong. So it's always their fault. They're the worst. They're the black sheep of the family. They're not celebrated, even if they do achieve the same grades as their siblings. They're not celebrated. They're not taken care of. And from that neglect and that sort of emotional abuse, things such as codependency and narcissism in itself begin to affect you and therefore shape you into the adult that you would be becoming. And the reason this scapegoating happens is because either the narcissist feels that that child is not good enough, or that that child is a threat. So they see a lot of potential in that child, and therefore they need to oppress that to make sure that the position of the narcissist isn't threatened. Or it could be the other way, where there's the golden child. So this child is representative of the family. They're always well behaved, or they look good, or they're the high achievers, or they're celebrated a lot more. They're always put on a pedestal. And whether you're the neglected child or the golden child, you both would have your issues. It doesn't mean that the golden child gets it easy. The golden child is put under a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations, and they also feel a lot of guilt for their sibling, because they could see the difference in treatment. They could see the unfair and balanced treatment that the parents give them in comparison to the sibling that's neglected. So therefore, they always have this guilt. They always feel like they need to fix things. They need to take care of that neglected sibling more so because the parents are lacking in that. For the golden child, it also becomes difficult because they know that they're put on a pedestal, but they could be knocked off that pedestal at any time. So they feel that pressure of constantly wanting or having to perform to be the favored. And it just creates so many problems within the family household, because then in this sort of systems, the siblings begin to protect each other against the parents, and there is no real relationships or boundaries set, and there is no real emotional connection between anyone. Everybody's on survival mode. So that's when it gets very, very messy and complicated for families. So what happens most times when people watch these videos or just read or come across anything like that and find the word, then it's kind of working backwards, and then you see, oh, hold on, my mom or my dad had these traits. What most people regard their parents to be when they have a hard relationship with them is that my parents are difficult, my parents are not available, my parents are selfish, my parents are challenging. So all those things are red flags of a parent being narcissist. So kids that come out of these narcissistic families, their mantra for life is, I'm not good enough. So they will just walk around thinking that they are not enough, and that would be what they live by. So how do you deal with a narcissistic parent? Because if you now recognize the patterns, you know they are a narcissist, and you still have to spend Christmas, Eid, birthdays, weddings, everything with them, and they'll still be a part of your life, the best thing to do to really pinpoint where the issues are, what the triggers are, is to go on to a little bit of a data gathering mission, and just for the next 3 months, for the next 6 months, just write down the patterns you see, what triggers your parents off, what it is that they say, and you have to apply all the coping mechanisms that you would with a classic narcissist, which is to not entertain them, not give them time, not bite back, because there's no telling a narcissist anyway, so there's no point you wasting that energy trying to correct them. The best way to deal with a narcissist is to manage your expectations and understand the patterns, so you know what's coming, so you could predict it. If you've done your data gathering for like 3 to 6 months and you understand how your parents work and you see the patterns now, you kind of know what's to come. So if you have an event that you have to hang out with them and spend the day with them, prepare for that mentally. And actually, like the way you would for a job interview, literally sit there and have a pep talk with yourself and clear your mind and understand what's coming, because that's who they are, and they're your parents, and that's what they will continue doing. So it's for you to know, predict, and be prepared for it. So you will see things like, what is she not available emotionally to talk about? Like if it's your mother, what is she critical of? What's she hypocritical of? What she triggers her? What sort of things she won't tolerate? And when you know that, you're then in control, because you know what's coming. You're prepared for it. Knowledge is power. You're ahead of the game. You're one step ahead. So when you're mindful of these patterns and traits, then you know not to engage, you know it's coming, not to entertain, not to explain, not to fight back, because it really doesn't achieve anything for you. Set yourself a limit, understand, like, even if it means setting a timer, okay, this is how much I will tolerate, and this is my expectations. I expect her to say these things. I expect her to do these things. So it's all about expectations and boundaries, and understanding how much, and also acceptance, because at the end of the day, you knowing these things is understanding and accepting that this is who they are, because as a parent, it's very difficult for us to get rid of them. We wouldn't want to, we wouldn't choose to. Therefore, it's about managing your expectations. I know I keep repeating it, but it's so hard for us to, when you know these things, you just want to sit someone down and say, well, that's really horrible, that's really mean, you shouldn't do those things. But please understand that as a narcissist, they lack that empathy that we as people have, and they can't relate or associate or understand what they're doing or how that's making the people that they care about feel. And when you've really pulled back and you're setting your boundaries and you're not really biting back, you're letting them say their piece and you're just like, and ahhing, sometimes your parents notice that and would pick up on that and say, well, you're being very nice and you're not really reacting, because they're used to you reacting a certain way, and that they feed off that. So if you're not giving them what they're looking for, then they become aware that, hold on, something isn't right. And the best way, because they're still trying to trigger you, they're still waiting for that reaction. So if that happens, then the best thing to do is just to turn around and say, I'm just giving you a chance to speak. I haven't seen you in a long time, so I just like hearing what you've got to say about the situation. Because if you are going to share your opinions and thoughts, you know you're going to get gaslighted. You know you're going to get dismissed. So why even give them that opportunity to do that? I know it may seem like you're playing a game, but the best way to deal with a narcissistic parent is to actually not be combative. Because what happens is sometimes you watch these videos or you see something that really hits the nail on the head for you, and you're like, aha, I know what's going on. I'm going to go and confront my parent. But what you will do with that is actually inflame them and trigger them way more. And you'll be back in the mud. So you don't want that. There is no educating them otherwise. They've been a certain way and it's worked for them for many, many years. Especially if you're their child, they have the authority over you. So if you're going to come and tell your mom what to do, we know that's not going to well, it wouldn't happen with my mom. There's no way I could sit her and tell her what to do. I just don't give myself the right to. So when you are in a situation with a narcissistic parent and you want to catch them out, the best thing to do is not to inflame them. It's always play smarter. So always play one step ahead, understand that these are the patterns that will happen, and therefore you're not going to give in and bite. And you're just going to pick your battles, and you're just going to walk away when it hits like toxic levels. Then you know that, okay, this is the pattern, and I know what's coming next, and it's just going to get more and more toxic. So before it gets to that, I'm going to remove myself from the situation. So therefore you maintain a peaceful, calm, semi-calm environment for yourself the next time you're in that situation. Of course, we all want to maintain our relationships with our loved ones. And this is precisely why I did this video, because when it comes to our parents, it isn't just that simple that you should cut them off or you should walk away. When it's family members, they're with you for life. So the best way to do that is that maintain those relationships, but you don't necessarily have to engage in them or entertain them. You protect yourself and just keep it calm and civil for as long as you can, because at the end of the day, they're your family. Really hope that this has helped. More narcissistic videos will be coming up with different dynamics of relationships, so keep an eye out. It'll be up next week. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys again here soon. Mwah.